The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by hosts and guests on this podcast are their own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of UCLA Athletics or UCLA Gymnastics. The content of this podcast is strictly for informational purposes only and should not be considered professional advice.
Having, deep discussions on different issues about athlete safety and making sure everyone has a voice, making sure all the different stakeholders in USA Gymnastics are heard, making sure we could get as much information as we can, right? To be able to use it, learn that from that information and use it to make the organization better and safer for athletes.
Welcome to the Black Gymnast Olympic Dreams edition of the Resilience to Brilliance podcast, where you'll be inspired by the history and eye-opening accounts from Olympians who lived the dream. I'm your host, Kim Hamilton Anthony. Here we go. The Black Gymnast Olympic Dream edition of the Resilience to Brilliance podcast is a short podcast series dedicated to the young Black gymnasts and their families out there who have that Olympic dream. In the 2024 Olympic trials, you will likely see more Black gymnasts competing at this level than ever before. So I thought I'd bring on some individuals who can provide some encouragement and advice for those young athletes who will be watching and their families on how to navigate the gymnastics world while embracing the skin they're in. Also, I want to bring on those who can help us learn a bit more about the history of Black gymnasts and those who can share their own personal stories about what it took for them to achieve their own Olympic dreams. On this episode, we have Tasha Schwikert Moser. Tasha Schwikert Moser was on the U.S. women's gymnastics team that won the team bronze medal at the 2000 Olympics in Sydney. She also served as the team captain of the women's team that won the USA's first world team title. After representing the U.S. around the globe, she continued her gymnastics success at UCLA, where her accomplishments included winning 2 NCAA national all-around titles. Well, I had a very special time with Tasha, and our conversation took what I felt was an unexpected turn when she began to share what it was like behind the scenes at the 2000 Olympics. And she also talked about what she is currently doing to make gymnastics a safe space for all athletes at all levels. Let's listen. Tasha, welcome to Resilience to Brilliance. So glad to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
Well, I figured we'd just go ahead and get started right from the beginning of your gymnastics career. When did you start taking gymnastics very seriously?
Very seriously. I think I was 7. So I got into it when I was 3, mommy and me classes. But when I started competing at age of 7, I remember my first gymnastics meet, just excited to be there. Wasn't sure how things would navigate through the day. But in the end, I ended up winning every event in the all-around. And I think that was my first taste of dominance right there. And then I was hooked.
That's all it took.
Yeah.
Was that one dominating meet.
Yep.
Now, once you dominated that first meet, was the Olympics your immediate goal, or did that come somewhere else along the way?
Yeah, it definitely came along the way. I was a pragmatic kid, and so I just remember, because my aunt loved to brag about, how well I was doing in gymnastics to all her friends and her neighbors. And I remember one time I was at her house, and she was with her friends, and she said, "Oh, Tasha's so great at gymnastics. She's going to the Olympics." And I had to stop her. I think I was 9 or something. And I looked at her and I was like, "Do you know only," and I think at that point it was 7 girls go every 4 years. "Do you know that only 7 gymnasts make the Olympic team every 4 years? My chances of it are very, very slim. Don't tell people I'm going to the Olympics." You just don't know. And so, I think it became more of honestly, about 13, 14, when I was an elite gymnast competing as elite, competing internationally for the U.S. At that point, it was a dream, but I just didn't I didn't know if it was feasible, but that wasn't where my head was at. It wasn't just like Olympics or bust. I was just really trying to be the best gymnast that I could be, at whatever like age category I was in, whether it was junior, senior, or, that year, right? Just maybe trying to win the state meet, wanting to win the national championship, really just winning at every milestone.
Right.
Because, I was the underdog going into Olympic trials. I wasn't really supposed to be on the Olympic team. I was, an alternate, and then, happened, right? And then I was asked to be part of the team.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about that. Explain to those who have not heard that detail about your career what actually happened.
2000, parts of it are even fuzzy to me because it's been 24 years. But in a nutshell, at the end of Olympic trials, they were naming the Olympic team. I was named as an alternate. And then I believe they actually like ranked the alternates. And so I was not the first alternate. And then after Olympic trials, I was told that I was being invited to train with the Olympic team as part of the Olympic training squad at the Crowley Ranch. Mm-hmm. So I was very excited just to be there. Dominique Dawes was like my all-time idol, gymnastics idol. And so being able to train alongside of her was just like a dream come true. But again, in my mind, I wasn't there to compete for the U.S. in the Olympics. I was just there to be part of the training squad. And for me, it was, I took it as like, hey, this is going to be a great learning opportunity and just experience for me, because I was 15 at the time and I knew I had a lot of gymnastics in front of me. And then right before I was leaving to the Olympic training camp that they were having before they would depart to Sydney, I was told that I was going to travel to Sydney as one of the alternates. And I was thrilled about that, right? Like, here I get to go with the Olympic team. And, they're telling me, you might not get all the gear and things like that. But I didn't even care. I just was happy to be there. So got all packed up and we traveled to the ranch and we're there for, I think, about 3 weeks training. And then we did like a send off to Sydney where we did a little exhibition meet for a small audience in like a small gym. I think that was it was either in San Antonio or in Austin. Some smaller, Austin's huge now, but back then it wasn't, it wasn't like Houston or Dallas. It was a smaller town. I think it was San Antonio. And then we went to Sydney. And, whatever, the training was intense and, but it's the Olympics and I'm just happy to be there. I'm following all the directions. Like, you let me know what you need to do. I'll train like I'm on the team, but I'll hit all my routines in practice, but I'm just here to, be a support system.
So you talked about the training being intense. What do you mean by intense? Give us some examples.
We were training 2 4-hour sessions, approximately 4-hour sessions, lots of conditioning. The, vibe in the gym was like stoic and intense, and there was not a lot of energy. It was just lots of numbers, and you felt like every repetition that you would take, someone was watching and using it as one more consideration for where you're going to be out in the lineup, like how they're going to craft lineups and who's competing on what event. And again, I was the alternate at that point. So I wasn't worried about, where I was going to be in the lineup. I didn't have to worry about those things. But at the same time, I was there to also impress Bella Caroli and Marta Caroli and the national staff because, I knew that after 2000, I was going to continue. And what I was doing at the Olympic training camp, would impact my future.
I remember Mary Lou Retton saying that one of the coaches took off her wig and was banging it on the beam while she was doing her beam routine right before the Olympics and training camp. Did you have any experiences like that where they were just seriously testing your concentration, your focus, and trying to throw you off and see what happened?
So I think I know the coach she's talking about with the wig, because I remember there was a
Yes.
coach there with a wig. We will not name names. But
I loved her.
She was so nice.
Wasn't she?
Yeah, but she wasn't really coaching like in my generation. So, Mary Lou, she probably was coaching. She just was there to be a support system, like the mother hen when I was when it was my time. But no, I don't remember any like banging on the beam situations. But I do know like in at my gym at home, Cassie, she'd have some of my teammates line up and, like bang like little instruments and things like that, just to recreate like what it might be to feel like an international crowd, because international crowds are intense. And I never competed in a like world championships or Olympics prior to that. So, and I only had a few, I had a good amount of international meets, but like not super big ones. So I think it was just really trying to get me prepared for like the crowd, right? And which is interesting because then I look back at my career and we went to compete in Belgium in 2001 at the Worlds, and there were people like dressed up in like basically Halloween costumes, right? And had instruments, like full on like drum sets, right? And when we would compete, they would make all the noise. So that I think back to that time when Cassie had, my teammates standing there with like little, baby instruments and things like that. And I'm like, oh, it all makes sense. Like this is what she was trying to prepare me for. So, no, going back to the ranch, no, but I think they did it in different ways. So there was not a day, like we were doing this a lot. They thought that like basically being able to do a cold beam set with like never stepping foot on the beam like that day was going to be helpful. So we had to warm up all of our skills on the floor, like on a line, and then get up on the beam and do a full beam set. Like no warm-ups, no back handsprings, no like round off layout dismount to prep you for your double, nothing. Just get up on there and do a cold beam set, which is terrifying for one. And because I hated beam. So it was like my worst nightmare really, because it was like I hated beam, and then stack that on top of that, a cold beam set with no warm-up whatsoever. But it's also dangerous. Like I look back now, I'm like, that's crazy. And like, you don't have to, like the Olympics, they give you, or any meet, they give you time to warm up. Like, what are we doing? Like, why are we doing this? But yeah, so they would do it in different ways.
I can't imagine doing a beam routine without having had that touch, that 30-second touch. That's amazing. So what was your mindset as you are going through this rigorous training leading into the Olympics? I know you were there as an alternate, and so maybe you felt that you didn't have as much pressure. And you mentioned earlier that you knew that you still needed to impress because you were going to continue your gymnastics career after the Olympics. But what were you thinking? Were you ever nervous, or were you just so focused and you or just knew you were going to do your very best?
Yeah, so just focus, right? And I think my age impacts a lot of like how I was feeling back then, because I was 15. I'm just happy to be there, right? So 18-year-old Tasha would have approached that situation very differently, right? Or 19-year-old Tasha. But 15-year-old Tasha, I was happy to be there, like aware of my surroundings, but like so tunnel visioned in the fact that like I just want to impress and I just want to do my best. And, of course, like I didn't have the pressures of like, we're competing in the Olympic prelims in a week or 2 weeks or whatever, but I still wanted to impress. And so for me, that was just as important as if, I probably, I would maybe at that time, if I had the mindset of I'm competing on the Olympic team, my wanting to impress at that point was just as important. But I mean, it was laser focused. I mean, whatever Bella told you to do, whether it was, 10 bar routines in a day, which is what we did, that's what we were doing. And our personal coaches had zero say in the plan for the day. It was, Bella's plan for the day, national staff coaches planned for the day, and they were just there as like supporting cast members, just completely laser focused. But also, you know, like I'm a human and I have emotions, and I remember being at the Olympics like crying myself to sleep because I felt like I was starving, right? Because we weren't being fed enough too. So yeah, laser focused. You know, I wanted to impress, but it was rough. It was really rough.
Tasha, I had not heard that story. I don't know if you've shared it before, but you literally cried yourself to sleep because you were hungry?
Yes. Multiple days. I remember feeling so hungry and starved that I cried. Yeah, I mean, I don't know like how much we want to get into that on today's podcast, but no, the Olympic experience in Sydney with that team, you know, we weren't in the Olympic Village. We were in a women's boarding college away from Sydney. And they told us they were putting us there because it was too loud in the village and they wanted us to focus, which I get all that. But at the same time, you're taking away the experience of the Olympics, right? Mm-hmm. You know, for it's so much more than just being so focused about the winning, you know, that experience of being in the village and being around other athletes and like feeling the energy of the Olympics in the village. We didn't get that. But also I do think part of them putting us in a women's boarding school in a controlled environment away was also their way of being able to control like our food intake, right? Because you could go and get, you know, there's eating halls and things like that. We had a kitchen in our boarding college, and they would actually lock the doors after we ate a meal because they were worried that we would go in there and take the food because we were starving. So
that you would be doing the human thing to do is when you are hungry, you eat. Wow, Tasha. I just didn't expect to hear that. So you go into the Olympic Games. When did you know that you would be competing?
It's been a long time. I think it was about 3 to 5 days. Maybe it was like 3 to 5 days before the first round of prelims. Cassie came into my room. It was like late at night after training and treatment. She came into my room. She was like, I want to talk to you. And so we were sitting there and I was like, you know, what's going on? And she said, as you know, Morgan is injured, right? We all knew Morgan was injured. Her ankle had been hurting her for a long time, but she was still trying to train through it in a boot, you know, take it off the train, go back in the boot. But Cassie's like, you know, at this point, like her stress fracture has gotten so bad that she can like no longer put weight on her foot. And so she's going to, she's done. And we had a coaches meeting as to which alternate was going to move into her spot. And all the coaches, there was a meeting, and like at the end of the meeting, like we decided on you. And at that point, she's like, wow. So you were on the Olympic team. And I'm like looking at her and I'm like tearing up a little bit because I remember that feeling. And it was like, I went from like, I'm just like happy to be here. And, you know, I want to do my best to impress Bella and Marta. And I'm like, how cool is it that I get to, you know, train alongside Dominique Dawes and be at like the chalk box with her. Cause she was like, even Giano, right? Like I think back to when I was 10 or 11 and, you know, they were in 96, you know, I watched Atlanta and I had my mom like video record on like my VCR and those like big tapes that don't exist anymore. And I would sit there and like come home from school and rewind it and start from the beginning and learn everyone's, you know, choreography. And for months I was rewatching the Olympics, right? And learned everyone's floor routine and beam routine, like the whole team. And
that's amazing.
Yeah. And so, you know, like I was just happy to be there. And then when she says like you're on the Olympic team, I just felt like the weight of the world came down on me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is for real now. Like not that I wasn't doing my best, and because I was, and that's why they picked me. That's why the coaches had a meeting and they said, we're going to put Tasha on the team, because I was training well and I was hitting my routines and I was consistent. But the mindset for me was different. It wasn't, I'm doing this because we're competing in 5 days in the Olympics. It was like, I'm just happy to be here. And so it was different. The mindset changed, and, thankfully I'm a competitor and I love pressure. And so when the mindset changed of, I'm just happy to be here, to now I'm on the Olympic team, like, thankfully, like, the gymnastics didn't change. I mean, if anything, I just like kept getting better, and my consistency increased every day, right? It didn't change anything in my gymnastics, but I just felt like the weight of the world just came crashing down, and it was like go time. And I was like, and then I also remember feeling like, so it was like initial like, oh my gosh. And then I remember the second feeling was like, I was heartbroken for Morgan, because I was like putting myself in her spot, like so empathetic. Like, I know she had worked her whole career for this opportunity, and with the injury, like, wasn't able to like fulfill that dream. So I was like devastated for her. And also because, we were closest in age on the team. I was 15. She was the next closest in age to me. She was 17. And, we were friends and I really liked her. And so I felt heartbroken for her. And then it was just like, okay, like, so what do I, and then all like the questions, like, are you guys, and then in my mind, I'm like, are they sure? Like, they want me. And then it was like, immediate was like, Cassie was like, we got to get your family here. So then they had to start making plans, right, to get them there, to be able to watch. So, it was like a crazy moment.
I can't imagine. So when you first walked out onto that floor as a part of that Olympic team, what went through your mind?
It was chaos. But let's like move back even before like walking out into the Olympic podium or stadium. So we were in the back gym. We are warming up for prelims for the Olympics. Side note, I found out after the fact that I had a partially torn groin tendon that I was just like dealing with and working through. Yeah. They, gave me a shot of painkiller, and like, so I was also in pain. But I remember, we're warming up, and I'm in pain. Everyone's in pain, right? Because like a lot of overtraining. But I just remember no one had told us the lineup yet. So we're like warming up events that we may not be competing because we don't have a lineup yet. And so like I remember like warming up vault, even though I didn't compete vault, but I'm like warming it up in the back gym because like no one's saying like, okay, Tasha, you're going to start this event and you're going to compete. For nobody. So it's kind of like, it's a cluster. It's a cluster back there, right? Oh. It's chaos. So I remember like it was time, warm-ups were over. We all kind of, line up in front of Bella, and he's got the paper, it's like supposed to be the lineup, and he's like trying to figure it out, and the music starts, and we still don't know who. So like I just remember walking as he's being like, okay, like you're actually gonna, so she's telling me you're gonna compete, bars, beam, and floor. And at that moment, that's when I found out that I was not competing vault, even though I was in the back gym in the prelims, like, messing around with the vault. And then I was told I was going to start on all the events. I was going to be the first athlete up. So it's already a cluster. I'm like panicking because it's like, I'm just a little whippersnapper. I'm like 15. I'm just like, okay, tell me what you need me to do and I'll do it. Right. And I was taking it all in. And so I'm like, okay, I'm starting. And you've told me I'm starting on beam. We're going to floor, and we're doing bars, and that's it. And I'll be the first athlete up. And because this is my first big international competition, I've never dealt with like the electronic scoreboards on the like podiums and like how you're supposed to salute to the judges. So and then I remember like Marta coming in and saying to me, hey, like when the judges salute you, you're not going to salute them facing them. You're going to turn around and show them your number, and you're going to like throw your arms up and salute. And that's how you salute. Like, you don't look at them, they need to see your number. And I'm like, okay. So like, I just remember being more concerned about screwing up the salute with the number thing than anything else because I didn't want to mess it up. But I was like worried that I would get up there and I'd be so tunnel visioned, like in wanting to like focus on my beamer team, that I would forget when they would say salute, I would just like do my normal thing and look at them and I would forget to turn around. So I was like very, very worried about making sure I didn't screw up the salute. Which, like looking back, like maybe that helped me focus because maybe it made me not so focused on the routine, and I was, it like, I don't know, but I just remember it being a cluster, and then looking back, like all of that was so unnecessary. Like why did we do that? Like why wasn't there a lineup? Why were we warming up events that we weren't really going to compete on? Like, what was happening?
Mm-hmm. And to this day, you still don't know why it went down that way?
No, I think we all left and no one asked any questions. We just went home and dealt with the trauma.
You just made it through.
Yep.
You said you went home and dealt with the trauma. You just competed in the 2000 Olympics. And what I would think you would say is you go home and you celebrate the fact that the team won a bronze medal and you just performed on the largest stage for the sport of gymnastics in the world. But you said we went back home and then dealt with the trauma. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
It was a lot because, like I said, we didn't, the training was excessive. Like we were so overtrained. I mean, looking back at it, we were doing hard landings every day, full routines every day, twice a day, full sets, hard landings, full routines, twice a day. I look back and I think right after the Olympics, we counted the days of training that we did, like, and how many breaks we had. We trained 2.5 months straight with a few half-day breaks, right? There was no, like, being on the plane, like the plane ride to Sydney, they called it a break. And even on the plane, granted it was like it was a chartered plane, so it was only athletes. But even on the plane ride, they made us get up and do like an aisle workout, okay? We're on the plane and we're like doing conditioning.
Tasha.
In the aisles, and you see all of the other athletes from like baseball and the other teams looking at us like, what the is happening? And we're just like, like these little robots, like doing what we're told, doing the plane aisle workout. Yep. And then you can't make me think. Sorry. It's okay. And then when we get there, like as soon as we land, we go like straight to a gym because they're like, oh, you need to like shake out your legs. We've been on a plane, and it's like, how about we rest and get acclimated to the new time change? Because like I'm pretty sure it's like daylight here and it's like nighttime there, or like whatever it is, and we need to rest.
Rest is good.
Yeah, no, not they did. That's not what they thought. Yeah, so we got there and like worked out right away, and so you feel like you're overtrained. Then like I said, I had a partially torn hamstring that I was dealing with the whole time that Larry was treating, as he was also abusing. Everyone was injured, right, in some capacity. Like I said, we weren't being fed enough. I remember our parents got to come visit us. We had it was like visitation day, right? They're like, your parents can come visit you. We were so excited. They made us all go outside on the grass to spend time with our parents. Our parents were not allowed to come in to like our rooms or even in the house that we were like staying, because they were like worried. And they didn't say this, but it was obvious why they didn't let us. They were worried that our parents would like bring us food, or really food. And so they wouldn't let our parents, and they were like watching. They were like it was like the craziest, like it was like supervised visitation on the grass outside of the boarding college, like the ladies' boarding school we were at. Supervised visitation with our parents.
What did your parents think about this supervised visitation? Did they think anything was weird about it, strange?
I don't know. We've never talked about what they felt about, this supervised visitation. I just think they were just, at least my parents, they were just excited to see me, right? It had been a long time. And, we're at the Olympics. So even if it is weird to you, you're not going to say anything. You're going to tell someone that this is kind of unacceptable because your kid's about to compete in the Olympics. So whatever feelings you had, negative feelings about anything regarding the situation, no parent was going to speak up because they all knew how intense the situation was with the training. And so everybody was walking on eggshells. You don't say anything, you just keep your head down and you do your job. And if you have any feelings or opinions about it, you're not going to share it. Keep it to yourself, because we're out here to try to win a medal.
Now, did you actually keep it to yourself, or did you and your teammates ever talk about some of these things that were going on? Or was even that taboo?
Yeah. I think, so me being 15 and significantly younger than the rest of them, it was weird. So there were it was taboo because, everyone had their individual coaches and everyone was in fear of being pulled out at any moment, right, off the team at any moment. So there was that dynamic. So there wasn't a lot of let's confide in each other because we were all worried about, well, and again, I was an alternate, so I wasn't really worried about anything at first. But I could feel that people were maybe, would be worried about what would happen if people were confiding with one another. But also, too, there was 3 of them that were actually heading to college after the Olympics. So I felt like they had a closer bond and had more in common and could relate more because they were, similar age, all about to head out to college and compete. And so I felt on an island a little bit in terms of being able to have someone to confide in because, I was so much younger. I wasn't going to college, so I didn't understand that dynamic. I didn't have a teammate on the team, right? I know that, Morgan and Alyssa were teammates, so I didn't really have a teammate. I will say I probably spent, the person I felt closest to and that I could connect to was Dominique Dawes. Even though she was 23 and I was 15, right? So there's a big age gap. So in terms of conversations, she probably didn't feel we were on the same page. But, and this was her 3rd Olympics. So, it wasn't her first time, not her first rodeo. But at least I just felt she was helpful. She was helpful because, I remember telling her one time that I was starving. I was so hungry. And she was well, and I needed energy because I felt sluggish. And she had mentioned that she would sometimes drink coffee to help with that. And so I remember, and I had never drank coffee before. So I remember one time I went to go grab a cup of coffee and Bella looked at me and he's what are you doing? And he pulled it out of my hand and he was you're too young to drink coffee. And then I just remember tearing up, so turning around so he couldn't see me, but tearing up because I'm thinking well, you guys aren't giving us enough food. I'm starving. So obviously caffeine, I'm aware that that's probably could help. And here you are taking that away. So
my goodness, my heart breaks for 15-year-old Tasha living under those circumstances. The one thing you're okay, this is going to help me. And it's taken away from you even. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I just, in terms of being able to confide in another person, I appreciate Dominique. She was really trying to help guide me and just give me little, nuggets of wisdom here and there. At least for me, I didn't feel I had anyone really to confide in. So Cassie, my coach, was actually, her and I, when there was a break in between the 2 workouts, I'd rest obviously, but a lot of times I would just hang out with my coach because I just felt I don't know, it just made the most sense in the situation.
Right. Well, you two had an amazing relationship as well, and you were closer to her than you were with anyone else, and you still do. Yeah, which I love.
Yeah, no, she's totally a second mom, and I was talking to her. We were texting the other day. It's always she tells me she loves me and I love her, and so we're. Aww. I know I'm getting emotional over here.
Now tell me what that means for you to have a coach like that. There are quite a few gymnasts back in the day who may not have that type of relationship with their coach, but yet you talk about her and it brings you to tears in a positive way. Tell me about that.
She's just been like a guiding light in my life throughout all of it. I mean, she had, I was actually at a gym in Las Vegas when I was, 6 years old, and her husband moved to Las Vegas so he could be in Cirque du Soleil, and they bought the gym. She had never been a gym owner before. She had coached before for her mother's gym in New York, I believe, but and I'm pretty sure, if I remember the story right, she was just coming from Wall Street, right? So it's not like she was deep into coaching at that time in her life, but took the gym over and built her business and identified that I was talent, and identified my sister being one of the more talented ones in the gym as well, and just grew up with her, right? I mean, she was my coach at every level that I competed, and obviously I had other coaches who also coached me as well, but she was always my main coach. And I just remember she sacrificed a lot with her own kids, right? Because we'd travel around the world competing in international competitions, and she'd have to leave for weeks at a time, and her 2 babies. And I just, as a mom now, looking back at the sacrifices that she made for her own family, being able to be with me to support my dream. Just super appreciative of her. But that's what coaches do, right? That's what coaches do. But even more than just a coach, she, taught us life lessons, and for her, it was always about, trying to be a good human being. And she realized there was life after gymnastics because she competed in college, and education was so important for her. And I just remember her always stressing, look, wherever you go for college, I really do think you should take an opportunity to go to a school that's going to give you a great education, right? Because it's so important for your life after gymnastics. There were bumps along the way. I remember at some point in my career, I moved in with her for a couple months, and she took me in, and just no questions asked, right? And she would take me to school, and she's always had my back with anything. And when you're a kid and you're going through that, you're it's nice to feel loved by someone and your coach, and being supported from your coach. That's one thing, but now as a mom looking back, she had her own family, she had a husband, she had kids, she was running a business, and she still was able to make me a priority, and just super appreciative of that. And then beyond just all of that, I knew she was doing the best she could with the tools she had in terms of our training, the elite training, and how she approached my training and how it intersected with training at the camp, or on the national team at the Caroli Ranch during the national team camps. I mean, I was lucky to have her because of all the coaches. She was the most reasonable, she was the most empathetic coach in the circumstances, right? So I'm not saying everything she did was perfect, and I know now, she's educated herself on, healthy coaching, and I mean, she's really made that her life mission now to make sure that any coaching is healthy coaching, because she doesn't want to mentally really screw up gymnasts that she's coaching. But I just remember during the Olympic camps, she was the most reasonable. So she'd look at me and know that I was in pain, and know that I was exhausted and tired, and she'd look at me and say I know you're tired. And you'd have Bella Caroli saying, hey, we're doing 10 beam routines today, or 12 beam routines, 10 bar routines, 3 or 4 floor routines. And there's this one particular moment So we did 5 bar routines in the morning. I did my 5 bar routines, but I modified them because my partially torn hamstring, I was in excruciating pain, and it was a stalder up to the high bar, a straddle stalder up to the high bar, and it really bothered my groin, and so I modified it by just doing just like a stoop circle, like jump, to the high bar. And Cassie said, okay, we're going to modify in your routines. Like, I know you're in pain, so we're going to modify. So I did the modification. She told me,
sense.
even though it wasn't blessed by Bella, but I did my 5 bar routines, right? And I said, okay, I'm done with my routines. And he said, well, I didn't see your, stalder connection to the high bar. And I said, yeah, my leg's hurting me. And I was even scared to tell him that my leg was hurting me. I said, my leg's hurting me. So we just decided to do the stoop circle. But it's like the easiest skill in my routine. It's not an issue. And I'll do it like when we do like an actual verification. And he said, nope, none of your routines count, and you're going to start over. And you're going to do it with your stalder connection. 5 more. And so I remember being at the chalk box, just like, yeah. And then Elise Ray had gotten in trouble that day too on bar. So like, we're both in trouble, right? And we both have to like start the assignment over. And I just remember us both like being there, like chalking up and like tears, just like, we're trying to like hold back the tears, but we're both just crying. And I'm looking at Cassie, and she's like helpless because there's nothing that she can do. Like, Bella clearly has, veto power over everything. So I have to do 5 bar routines, and she knows like how much pain I'm in. So I do 5 more bar routines. Well, no. So I said, it's in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm doing 5 bar routines. Cassie comes over and whispers to me. She's like, look, when you do 1 bar routine, I'm going to call out loud, okay, 2, good job. Like, you've done 2, because I see Bella's walking around and he's not like completely looking at you the whole time. So she like legit helped me cheat. Right. So I think I ended up only doing 3 bar routines, but she kept counting out loud, like these, fake numbers to make him think that we did 5, and it worked. And he thought I did 5, and he said, okay, now you can move on. But so it was like moments like that where I'm like, Cassie had my back. Right. And
she looked out for you.
And I looked, and no other coaches there were doing that for their athletes. At least, to my understanding, I don't think any other coaches were doing that for their athletes. So just really grateful for her, understanding, what I was dealing with. She was living it too as a coach. I mean, she saw it. She was a gymnast, so she could empathize. So yeah, no, I love her.
I remember seeing you at those national meets. I would be in the arena because I had a specific job as an announcer during that time. And I would watch the two of you and Cassie. And there was definitely a love and respect there. She had such a love for you. I had talked with her about you, and I had met you like when you were just coming into the scene. And I just remember seeing something very special that I did not necessarily see with other athletes and their coaches. And now that you are explaining what that relationship was like, it all makes sense, Tasha. It really does. I'm so glad that you had that experience with her. I'm so glad that she was with you, even though the 2000 Olympic experience wasn't ideal. For you to have Cassie there with you, supporting you and doing what she could to help you get through that time is priceless.
Yeah. No, I mean, she was incredible. Again, like, she did the best she could with the tools she has. And looking back, she's like, oh my gosh, like, the way I trained you was, I was horrible to you and this and that. And I was like, look, like, don't get so down on yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. Literally, like, you did the best you could. You're in this environment where, you have all these coaches who have had athletes at other Olympic Games, and you're watching them, and they're supposed to be like the status quo for like how you should be training your Olympian, right? So you're like watching them, trying to learn because you're a young coach yourself. But at the same time, you're realizing like what they're doing is totally insane and crazy, right? Like abusive, really. Like, I was going to say borderline abusive, but it's actually like abusive.
It is.
And so, no, I mean, she really was just doing the best she could. And I just, like, I think it's incredible how she's looked in the mirror, you know, and decided, like, you know, I will not be part of the problem any longer, right? Like, I'm going to change my ways. I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to, you know, get other coaches to on board with this, like, new way of coaching, which is, like, we don't need to completely destroy an athlete and their emotions and their mind and their, you know, and their bodies, right? Like, we can do soft landings a lot, and it's okay. You know, we can do half routines, we can do drills. Like, we don't have to do full routines, arm hard landings, you know, crazy numbers all the time, every day, twice a day. Like, you don't need to do that to be great. So, and then I don't know, like, she always tried to keep in mind and always made me think about the big picture, and would always just talk about, you know, yes, the Olympics are great, but there's more to life than gymnastics. Even though, you know, the goal at that time was, you know, the Olympics and, you know, being the best in the country. But, like, I just remember being young and in the gym, and she's a young mom. She'd have her kids in the gym with us, and, you know, Taylor and Lauren, with their babies, like, you know, crawling around. And so I kind of grew up with them alongside. And I think that kind of brings you down to reality and makes you realize there's more to life than gymnastics. You know, I remember us training at Gym Cats, and sometimes, you know, I'd be training with, like, the level 10s or the level 9s, and we'd be in the middle of an assignment. And then vividly, I remember one time us being on bars. She stopped the workout and said, "All right, everyone, I want everyone to come here and gather around." And she had, like, these cans with, like, and then, like, pennies and nickels and dimes. And she's like, "Okay." And she gave a couple people some cans and some others some change. And she said, "We're going to practice our public speaking." Like, we, like, legit stopped the practice. And she was like, "Public speaking is, like, an important skill. And I want you guys all to be really good at it." And so she's like, "I'm going to pick a topic. And, you know, someone's going to talk about it for 2 minutes." So someone else had a timer. And every time you say an which I'm really bad at, and I'm still doing. So, Cassie, I'm sorry. Like, I need to get better at this. But every time you say an or a ah or a like someone's going to drop the penny or the, you know, into the can. And yeah, and so there were just, like, fun little moments like that where it's like, okay, there is more to life than gymnastics, right? And I love that she will pop in here and there and remind us that, like, you need to have a really good bar set, but also I want you to be really good at public speaking too, you know, all in the same workout. So I am so grateful that Cassie was my coach. I don't know, I can't. Yeah, no, I'm so grateful. And I don't know if you ever heard the story, but they actually, the national team staff, we were at one of the camps in 2000, the Olympic training camps. Kathy Kelly called my mom and didn't tell me that she was calling my mom, didn't tell Cassie she was calling my mom. So she called my mom back at home in Vegas and said, you know, like, Bella and the national team were really impressed with Tasha, and we think that she should probably go to another gym to be with another coach who has more experience, who has been to the Olympics before. And so,
What a hit.
yeah. And then so Cassie, I guess later that day, found out. Well, so my mom called Cassie and said, you know, Kathy Kelly called me and told me that we should take Tasha to another gym. And I remember seeing Cassie later that night. She was, like, crying. And I'm like, what's happening? And they didn't tell me. And she's like, they called your mom without me knowing and suggested that you go to another gym to a coach with more experience, even though she had been, like, you know, coaching me since I was 6 years old. And it got me to this point, right? Got me to this point where you're so impressed, national team staff, right? So you're so impressed. She's obviously doing a good job, but now you want me to go somewhere else? No. So my mom, you know, being the vocal Joy Schwikert does not hold back, as we've seen over the years. I remember being like, so what did you say to Kathy Kelly after she said that? She's like, I told her to.
Oh, wow.
Okay. She's like, we're
She
not
did
going
not
anywhere.
mince words there.
We're not going to like, run our life around like your gymnastics. Like, I'm not going to like move my whole life for like your training. I'm not going to do it. And I'm not going to like send you to live with like another family. But it was things like that where it's like, wow, USA Gymnastics, like really? At that time, USA Gymnastics, like, during those years. I think I'm very impressed with where we're at now as an organization.
And I would love to talk about that. So you are in the middle of a 4-year term of serving on the board for USA Gymnastics. And there is a great reason, great meaning behind why you're serving there. Can you talk about that?
So when the Larry Nassar bankruptcy came to a conclusion, through the bankruptcy, we were requesting non-monetary items to be put in the order, that would help the current athletes now and the future athletes going forward to make the organization better, right? Because the whole goal of this whole thing was we got to protect children. We've got to protect children, kids, athletes from being used for this ever happening again. And so we asked for a board seat, and we also asked for 2 places on 2 different committees to have a voice in the organization going forward. So I am the survivor representative on the board of USA Gymnastics currently. And when the position came open, I raised my hand. I said, I want to do it. I'm very vocal. I have no problem with telling anyone in that boardroom how I feel. At this point, I have nothing to lose, right? I'm not involved in gymnastics. I'm a corporate M&A attorney, at a firm in Texas. So I have nothing to lose. I'm not a coach. I'm not worried about athletes and they're going to get picked for a team, this and that. And so after the bankruptcy concluded, I started my term, working very closely with Lily and the executive management team and the other board members. It's been super eye-opening and interesting to be on this side of things and to see how much thought and discussion goes into everything. And from the stories I hear from them, at least the current board, because the current board was brought in after the Larry Nassar scandal happened, right? So they were brought in to fix things and pick up all the pieces. So really none of those people were there when the abuse and all the things were happening. But the stories they tell me of just coming on as a new board and learning that discussions about the well-being of athletes were not being had, right? They were not policies and procedures in place to protect athletes prior to let's pick up the pieces and move forward. So I think they've changed a lot of the policies, a lot of the procedures. Everything with all of our board meetings is athlete safety top of mind. We're having, deep discussions on different issues about athlete safety and making sure everyone has a voice, making sure all the different stakeholders in USA Gymnastics are heard, making sure we could get as much information as we can, right? To be able to use and learn that from that information and use it to make the organization better and safer for athletes. And, a lot of times, I love it too, the discussions, because everyone has different opinions. You have, you have some former athletes like myself, some former athletes that, went through that whole Olympic era. Obviously I was abused by Larry, and so I experienced that as well. So I have that experience.
And Tasha, I'm so sorry.
I'm just glad that I could use what happened, because I obviously can't change it, right? I can't change what happened, but I'm just glad that I could use it to help people going forward and just making sure never happens again, right? Yeah, I know that's all I can say, right, on that. I don't even know what, there's no other way to put it. It was terrible, but and I didn't really want the world knowing about it, but I think it's important that I started talking about it, and glad that I've been able to be a voice, because that generation, and even just beyond gymnastics, right? Like that generation of like hidden abuse, you know, like before, you know, prior to this new generation where we're airing everything, right? We're airing all the skeletons now. We're talking, you know, mental health is important. We're talking about everything. Like this generation wants to talk about everything. And I think that's great. But that older generation, you know, everything was kept in the closet. You didn't talk about it. Mm-hmm. If it was an ugly topic, you didn't talk about it. No one wanted to hear it. You kept it hidden, and you put a smile on your face, and you keep your head down, and you just go to work or live your life. And so I'm just glad that we're in a time in life where we can talk about these things, and we can feel supported, and we can feel like we're not the only one. And through social and different things like that, there's communities where you can feel supported. So I'm just glad that I can take all of the bad things that happen and use that to talk about it, and to be a support system for somebody else.
Tasha, I appreciate you even being willing to talk about this. I know that there are probably people out there who would say, you know what, he's in jail, it's over with, let's just move on and forget about everything. But there are women like yourself who you just can't forget about it. It is something that you've chosen to use to help other people. Your experience, your voice, the representation that you have on the board for USA Gymnastics. What is it that needs to happen to ensure that nothing like the Larry Nassar abuse can happen again? What needs to happen?
Communication, right? Communication. You know, I get this question all the time, like, how do you think it happened? I mean, it happened because there was this environment that I explained earlier, like that Olympic training environment where you weren't allowed to have emotions or opinions about things, right? If you were sad or tired or hurting, like you were not allowed to show it on your face or in your gymnastics that day. Any like an opinion on whether, you know, you feel good enough to for full floor teams on the hard surface, you're not allowed to have an opinion about that. You're going to go do those floor teams because they told you to do them, right?
Right.
You know, I remember we used to start our workouts with Bella with like this 45-minute like run. Like 40 minutes into it, we were doing like tuck jumps, like around in a circle. And I mean, a 45-minute run before like, you know, a 3.5 hours of like training on each event, and then a rest, and then like 3.5 to 4 more hours of event training. Like that's insane. Like you're killing everyone's legs before we even get started. So you weren't allowed to have opinions, and then everyone was hiding injuries, right? Like I said, like no one knew I had a partially, like to the outside world, no one knew I had a partially torn groin tendon, or a partially torn groin tendon, because I didn't talk about it. I had to hide it. I even had to hide like going to Larry to get more pain medication. I had to hide. I remember going to Larry one day and saying, can I please get, like, I'm in so much pain. Can I please have more painkillers, more pills? And he's like, giving it to me. And then Bella comes over and he's like, what are you doing? And I looked at him and I was like, oh, nothing. Like, I really had to like play it off. Like I wasn't like trying to get like, you know, ibuprofen 800s for my pain, because he didn't even know. Bella didn't know because I couldn't tell him. And then he looked at me when I was trying to get the medication, and he said, you better knock it off or I'm going to pull you out of the lineup. And so it was then I was, okay, well, we got to like really keep this on the down low. Like, I absolutely can't tell him that anything's hurt because he just told me he was going to pull me off, you know. And this was, at this point, I'd already been named to the team, right? This was like that 3 to 5 day period. I'm not sure if it was 3 or 5 days, 3, 4 or 5 days, but yeah. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to pretend that I am healthy.
So surely if you can't even tell the coach that you need more painkillers so that you're not in as much pain as you have been, telling them about abuse, I could see where there would be fear in that. Will they believe me? Is this even abuse? I'm not even sure what this is about. So you're talking about the culture that has been created over the years that has stolen the voice of young girls in many cases.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. So you have that whole dynamic going on where there's just fear. There's fear in this environment. And then you have, you know, like Larry, who is, he was grooming, right? Back then, I didn't know what it was, but grooming techniques. You know, we felt like we were able to go in the training room and shut that door, and we were able to tell him anything. And he would basically be like, look, I am your safe place. I'm your safe place. You can tell me anything because I'm not going to go tell the coaches. I'm not going to go tell Bella and Marta. But then I was also hearing stories from my teammates where some things that he would tell Larry would get back to their coaches. So I don't think that really wasn't true in all regards, but he made us feel like this is a safe place. I'm not telling anyone anything. You can complain about your coaches. You know, you can tell, you know, obviously I know about all the injuries because I'm over here trying to treat them. He knew we were starving. He would sneak us food. He really became like our confidant and like our best friend. You know, it's like a weird thing to say, but like from like the food perspective, like we needed Larry. Because he really was like after 2000, like I didn't get any food snuck to me in 2000, but after 2000, like we go on these international competitions and like he would sneak us food. He'd put like Nutri-Grain bars and like power bars and things like that in like our bags, like secretly, or like keep him in our room, like put him in our rooms for us, you know. But then of course you cross the line and, you know, would ask about our boyfriends and then, you know, we'd have like little girl talk about boys and he wanted to get involved in the conversation. And when, as a little kid, I didn't think that was weird, but as an adult, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what grown man wants to get all up in the conversation of little girls talking about their little boy crushes? But, you know, again, like, you know, in addition to, you know, all the abuse and all the, you know, I'm doing this manipulation, this vaginal floor manipulation, it's going to help you, you know, as a cover for really just being a pedophile.
So is it about giving the athletes a voice?
Yes. So, I mean, yeah, main goal now, giving athletes a voice, you know, making sure that, you know, now they have food tables set up at the meets and at the trainings and everywhere, you know, at the camps. And I remember us having a discussion. I was in a board meeting and, you know, they were like, no, we've heard all the stories and we have now like put out snack tables. So the athletes, like we want the athletes now, go get the snacks, eat the snacks. We want them to feel we're all about healthy and happy, right? And hydrated and energized, right? We want them to take the snacks. So then I had a further conversation. I said, you know, I love how far we've come to the fact that we now have snack tables at the meets and at the training camps. But my question to you is, do the athletes feel like they can take those snacks? That's the next step, right? Now we need to get into the minutia of it. And they're like, well, we tell them they can. And I said, no. Like, do their personal coaches, are they on board to say, like, go get that snack, go get that bag of cashews, go get that Nutri-Grain bar, go get that fruit, go get that Gatorade, whatever it is. Like, are we all encouraging everyone to eat the snacks? And I said, okay, like let's work on that right now, right? So I mean, in these meetings, I go hard. I go hard because I use all my horrible experiences as an athlete that I went through, all the horrible experiences I went through, to put myself in the shoes and say, look, like, I want to pick apart. I know you guys are doing amazing things, and like literally, like the intent of these people, I mean, the intent. Like they are just wanting to do the best they can. They are like, safety is the utmost importance at this point, and I love that. But I will use my experiences to pick apart, right? Because I know that as much as USA Gymnastics is pushing all of the good things, at some level you can't control a personal coach of an elite athlete, even today, right? When it comes to like, let's encourage an athlete to be able to kind of like, let her eat, right? Let's hydrate all the time. Because, when I was training, they wouldn't even let us have water. And I'm sure maybe with you, they told us water would bloat us. I'm like, no, like hydration is a good thing. It helps muscles, right?
We heard all kinds of things that weren't true,
yes.
right? That were counterintuitive when it came to having the energy you needed. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and again, all of that, if there's communication, if athletes are able to feel like they can communicate to their coaches and communicate to USA Gymnastics and say, look, I'm tired today. Can we scale it back? Can I do drills today? You know what? Can I have an off day? I feel like I need to take a day off. Is that okay? Like I need rest today.
That was unheard of.
Unheard of.
Back in my day. Can I take a day off?
Like, yeah, unheard of. So communication and a voice, and people respecting that, right? Saying like, oh, like I appreciate you telling me how you feel. I'm going to honor that. Absolutely. What can we do to make sure, right, you are healthy, happy, rested, right, energized, motivated, right? If I need you to, take a day off today so that tomorrow you can come back and feel great. So yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely on the right path. And all those things I just mentioned, that's right now, that is, all those things are at top of mind, and the goal of the organization. But just know in these board meetings, I mean, I go hard, and I have no problem with voicing my opinions about anything I feel like should be different to be able to help and protect the athlete.
I am so glad that you are there in that space, Tasha. You're the perfect person for the job. Speak to the athlete, the gymnast, who has that Olympic dream. And from your experience, what would you tell her when it comes to speaking up for yourself, using your voice with your coach and with anyone, really, in life? How important is that?
So important. Oh my gosh. I mean, I think, I'm going to be 40 this year. It's crazy. I'm getting old. But I think, I think around 35, I became shameless. And when I say that, I'm just like unapologetically me. And I think what I would tell to an aspiring gymnast is be unapologetically you. Do what makes you happy. Do what you know is right for you. If you need that day off, speak up and tell your coach. Speak up and tell USA Gymnastics. If you guys need different snacks at the table, because you want different snacks, because you would enjoy different snacks, say something, right? And I feel like there's nothing wrong. There's no detriment to you at this point in time with saying anything. I mean, back when I was training, if I would have said anything, like I said, I was in fear of being pulled off the team. I was told I would be pulled off the team, right? If I ruffled any feathers. So now we're in a time where coaches and USA Gymnastics are encouraging athletes to speak up. So use your voice, speak up, and it's okay. And you will not be penalized for speaking up, and you will not be punished for speaking up. And your voice is powerful. And I think, and just know that the coaches in the organization, they want to hear from you. They're not mind readers, right? So give them as much information as you can in order to do better with whatever that is, whether it's doing better for other athletes, doing better for the organization as a whole. But speak up. Your voice is really powerful. And we're in a time now where it's okay.
Tasha, I appreciate you sharing that advice, sharing that wisdom. And it would be wonderful for these athletes to take advantage of the opportunity to utilize their voices, because that is going to come into play. You mentioned earlier that there is more to life than gymnastics. So after your career is done, you're going to need that voice. And I love what you're doing. And I have two more questions to ask you. The first one is, you mentioned, we talked about you being on the board of USA Gymnastics, but tell me what your personal and professional life look like.
Personal life, complete chaos. I've got 3 children. My oldest daughter, she's 8. The most sassy, fun, social kid you'll ever meet. She's a little hip hop dancer. She actually dances for the Houston Rockets on their dance squad. They're called the Little Dippers, and she loves it. It's so cute. My son is 6. He's probably my toughest kid. He is passionate and about everything. Loves basketball. Is obsessed with basketball. But he's strong-willed, like to a fault at this point, where sometimes parenting's hard and you're like, oh my God. But I know that he's going to take that like strong-willed personality and like use it, instead of like using it to like not listen to mommy or clean his room, he's going to use it one day for good, right? So it's like part of me when I'm like, oh, I love that little voice of yours. I love that you're using that strong-willed, personality and voice. It's hard as a parent, but like it's going to serve him well in life one day. And then my daughter, my third child, my daughter, she's 3. And she's just a cute kid. She's the baby sister, and she knows it. She'll tell you, I'm the baby. So she'll she gets whatever she wants. So that's fun. My husband is an NBA assistant coach. He's one of the assistants for the Houston Rockets. And so, that whole life in itself is just crazy, because we've moved a ton to get to this point. We've moved since 2019. We've moved 4 times. Wow. Dallas, Eugene, Oregon, Boston, and then Houston. So personally, my life is crazy, because it's funny. I talk to people and they're like, "What city are you living in today?" It's like, last time we talked, you were somewhere else. And then I'm a corporate M&A attorney and chair of our sports law department at a law firm called Monk Wilson Mandela. So we're based in Dallas, but we have offices in Houston, Austin, Waco, Miami, Los Angeles. It's kind of all over. We're about 100 lawyers, and I've been with them for almost 5 years. Super grateful to be with them, and super excited for the stuff that we're doing now. Obviously, being an athlete, I was like, we need to add, and with NIL, we need to add a department, an NIL department. So I am chair of our sports and NIL department, and we help universities, brands, collectives, small sports agencies, and even athletes just with NIL stuff. So I love doing that. Obviously, sports is my passion, and I love working with athletes in universities.
Talk about life after gymnastics. I love it, Tasha. Final question for today. What does living in Brilliance Mode look like for you?
Oh my gosh. I know it seems like so glamorous from the outside. But I feel like I'm drowning every day, to be honest with you. As a full-time attorney, working mom with 3 kids, and a husband with a career that like basically has him traveling he's out of town about 3 months a year, like during the season. And then, in the summer, traveling as well for his job. It's funny because, people, you're amazing. Your life's it's great. So accomplished. But I feel like I'm drowning every day, honestly. I feel like I'm like juggling a million things, and I'm trying to keep all the balls in the air. And sometimes they fall, but I feel like I know it looks like I'm doing a pretty good job at keeping the balls in the air, but at the end of the day, you know, you got to keep swimming. So what does it look like to be in brilliance mode? Just keep swimming. Life is hard. You know, and it's hard for everyone, you know, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, whether you're a working mom, or whether you have kids, whether you don't, like, we all have our hard. And I always tell myself, like, choose your hard, right? Life is hard, choose your hard. And these days I've decided to give myself grace, right? So I'm not, you know, I used to be this perfectionist gymnast, and now, like, if I didn't do the kids' hair and we're going outside somewhere, I'm not going to get down on myself for it. You know, if sometimes, you know, the laundry doesn't get done or some things don't get done, I'm not going to get on myself for it. I'm going to give myself grace and realize, like, eventually things will get done and it's going to be okay. So, I don't know, like, I feel like I'm a hot mess, but I just keep swimming the best I can.
I love it because there's so many people out there who feel the same way,
Yeah.
Tasha. And it's like, really? This is, you know, out front, it looks like this wonderful, but then, you know, life is hard. But I love just keep swimming. Stay at it. You got it.
Yep.
And I also like choose your hard. Keep swimming. Choose your hard. Tasha, thank you so much for being on today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Well, this is great.
Thanks for listening. If you want to learn more about Tasha Schwikert Moser, check out our show notes on inbrilliancemode.com/podcast. And to connect with Tasha on Instagram, follow her at Tasha Schwikert Moser. If you've enjoyed this episode of Resilience to Brilliance, please share it with others who may be encouraged by it. And to make sure you don't miss future episodes, follow us or subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms. You can also follow me on Instagram at RealKimAnthony. Any use of this podcast without the express written consent of Brilliance Mode, LLC is prohibited.